Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Worldviews. Today we have on Nate Sala. Nate is a pastor and debate teacher that currently hosts the popular Christian YouTube channel Wise Disciple, where he teaches his audience how to become the effective Christians that they are meant to be. Nate, thanks for coming on Worldviews.
Hey, Devin. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Nate, can you just kick us off with giving us your testimony? I know that you grew up in a Christian home, but somewhere along the way in high school, you lost your faith. Can you walk us through that whole journey?
Yeah, as an older person looking back, there's just a lot. Sometimes I'll still think about this, and there's a lot that's still left to learn about myself. I was a very prideful kid, so I fancied myself somebody who knew a lot, but you couldn't explain anything to me, Devin. So, yeah. I grew up in church. My parents were actively involved in church, but somewhere along the way, I put on this mask of performance to please my parents. And it was just this thing where it's like when you're in circles at church, you say the right things. The answer to the test question in Sunday school is always Jesus. You know what I mean? And I said the sinner's prayer with my mom at 5. And now I look back and I'm like, how could I have even appreciated what that was really saying? But as I grew older, I started to look at the Bible as a system of rules. And as I'm getting into my adolescent years, now I'm starting to want to desire to do the things that the Bible says not to do. And at some point at 17, I got bold enough to tell my parents, I don't want to go to church anymore. At that point, the cat was out of the bag. And so I left the church. I graduated high school early. I moved out, started going to college, and started living on my own. And it got into some crazy territory.
What did your parents react to you saying that you didn't want to go to church anymore and basically wanted to maybe denounce the faith?
Yeah, they were devastated. Like I said, my parents were heavily involved in church. My dad was a musician, so he was on the worship team. My dad's dad is a pastor. So, it's a family thing at this point. But my mom was also heavily involved. They had their own fellowship group on Tuesday nights. They were part of the setup team and the tear down team at church. They helped plant a church in New Mexico. This was their life. And for me to tell them and look them in the eye and say, I'm not going back to church, it was devastating. The thing that they did, though, and it reminds me now, Sean McDowell kind of did the same thing with his dad, Josh McDowell. I should say in reverse. My parents did the same thing that Josh did to Sean. They just gave me the space to figure this out. They trusted the Lord enough to let me go. And I appreciated that,
What was the moment that brought you back?
Very dramatic. I felt the presence of God. And I would say I immediately became aware that he was real in a moment. And it was, so long story short, there were just a series of tragedies in my life that forced me to confront my own mortality. There's a category for this. I was talking to William Lane Craig about this. It's called existential dread. And most people don't feel it. There's a great book by Clay Jones. He wrote on this. I think it's called literally Immortal. But basically, most people don't think about death. They'll tell you, some people will be cocky enough to tell you, yeah, I'm okay to die. I don't care. But most people don't really feel the weight of what it means that they will no longer be alive. The Lord, in his wisdom, forced me to confront this and made me feel the weight of it to the point where for a full year, I had nightmares of my own death. I couldn't get through one night's worth of sleep without waking up because somebody had killed me in my sleep. They walked up and shot me in the face, or, somebody that I loved was killed in front of me. It was a mess. And it was a process that started around when I was 27 years old, and it came to a head right at 30. Right at 30 years old, my dad was in a tragic accident, and he broke his neck. And at that moment, we thought he was going to die. And all the stuff that was in the background with me and the dreams and the weight of my own mortality, it all just came flooding up, to the surface, to the point where I prayed finally for the very first time. That's how stubborn I was, Devin. It took all of that for me to pray. And And in that moment, like I said, I felt the Lord and I knew he was real. And it changed everything.
So this is clearly a supernatural encounter. Since that point, have you had any doubts of God's existence?
Not one.
Wow. Okay. And how did you go from there to becoming a pastor?
So, because I had done, so you got to understand, I grew up in Las Vegas. And so I was born and then I bopped around a lot and moved around in the country, but I landed in Las Vegas right around, I think I was a junior in high school. And so basically the time where I'm now out on my own in college and living for myself, it's in Las Vegas. And I worked on the Las Vegas Strip. So all kinds of vice was available to me. Like it was a free-for-all is how I describe it. But because of my experiences, when I got saved, there was a lot in my past where I just realized, man, if people found out like what I've done and how strange and weird I kind of am, like nobody would make me a pastor. So that was just not in my mind at all. What I did want to do was I wanted to know the Lord. So I immediately jumped into school. I got my theology degree. And as I was graduating, somebody even asked me like, hey, are you going to be a pastor? I was like, no. Nobody would make me a pastor. And sure enough, I became a pastor, I think like 6 years later. So what I ended up doing was I ended up getting into teaching. So I went back after I got my theology degree, I went back and got my master's in teaching, and I just jumped into public high school settings and just taught. I taught literature and I taught debate and did that for a number of years. It was when I met my mentor in Las Vegas. He sort of took me under his wing. He taught me how to be a pastor. He ordained me as a pastor, and I became a pastor.
As a pastor, what is one common held belief within the Christian tradition or within theology in general that you've personally wrestled with or had a nuanced perspective on?
Oh, this is a good, well, I don't think, yeah, I don't think I have a nuanced perspective on this issue. I just think that my approach to this issue is left inarticulated, and I do this on purpose. A lot of people think that I'm a Calvinist because I've made videos in the past that seem to suggest. Well, I don't know why people think that, but anyway, but when I became a pastor, I had to start preaching and teaching through the Bible, and I had to become very careful about what the Bible is clearly saying. And I had to become very guarded about extrapolating things that the Bible is not clearly saying. And I became sensitive to the idea of leaning too far over the skis of Scripture. And so I really just wanted to be clear about what the Bible is actually saying. When it comes to God and his relationship with human freedom, and this spills over into like election, and stuff like that, this is what I mean. I don't think my answer is nuanced, but I take the approach that there's a lot that is left unsaid. And so, for example, the Bible teaches that God is sovereign. He is in control. Clearly, the Bible teaches this. The heart of the king is in God's hand, and he turns it wherever he wills, right? But also, the Bible teaches, and it's rather implicit, but it teaches that human beings are free, and they are therefore responsible for their moral actions. And so what I'll do is I'll just kind of point both these things out, and then I'll say, like how this plays together, I don't know. But I don't think that the Bible is answering that question either, so I'm not going to answer it.
It's a humble perspective. And as a pastor, what do you believe is the most underrated aspect of the Bible or underrated story in the Bible? Or you can do both.
The most underrated aspect of the Bible is the Jewishness of Jesus, the Jewishness of the New Testament specifically. And the way that I would say this is the Bible is a coloring book. The clear teaching, there's a category in Christianity called the perspicuity of the Scripture or the perspicuity of the gospel. I would never suggest that the fundamental basis of the teaching of salvation and the gospel is unclear. That's not what I mean. And in that sense, the Bible being like this coloring book, you have these clear lines, these boundaries that provide our fundamental doctrine. However, because understanding the Jewishness of Jesus in the New Testament has really only become an academic exercise, I'd say, in the last 40 years, we've really left a lot of these images of the Bible without color. And I propose that when we start to become sensitive to the Jewishness of Jesus, particularly in the way that he communicated as a Jewish rabbi, it brings the images to life with vivid imagery. And so I would say the aspect of the Bible that is underrated is that. And once you sort of get that, the light bulb comes on, because now you can see, oh yeah, the parables, there's parables in there that they just, like I said, they come alive,
And do you have an underrated story as well?
An underrated story of the Bible. I don't know about underrated. I feel like there's stories of the Bible that deserve a second go round, that perhaps we've kind of missed some of the messages that the stories are trying to communicate. So, for example, and I'm not, this is not novel. I'm not bringing this up for the very first time. Others before me who are way better teachers have pointed this out. The story of the prodigal son really shouldn't be called the story of the prodigal son. It should be called the story of the two lost sons. Because you have the prodigal son, obviously, who is lost, and he goes away and he has his lesson and he comes back. But you have another lost son in the background altogether. And I would propose that son is the one that the audience is supposed to wrestle with in the story. And it's the son that stayed behind. And he's also lost, clearly, You got the story of the sower and the seeds, right? Like the sower goes out to sow seeds, right? But the emphasis on that story, again, it's not exactly on the sower, but rather on the 4 types of soils that the seed hits. And in that sense, again, I just think that there's a message here for us to really chew on and internalize and try to apply to our lives. But I think we're kind of missing the point.
Do you think it's possible that I think that I found the book of Ecclesiastes has become underrated,
Oh, yeah.
as well to some degree the book of Job, which, by the way, your video on the book of Job is fantastic. But yeah, those two pieces of the wisdom literature seem to go under the radar these days with Christians that I know. And it's interesting explaining the concept of Job to even non-Christians that I know, and saying, yeah, this is a legitimate book in the Bible, this whole deal with God and Satan and this heavenly court and whatnot. So,
oh yeah, I hear you. Ecclesiastes. It's funny because atheists will, some skeptics will bring up Ecclesiastes. Oh, it's my favorite book. It's like, okay, well, you skip the end, because the last sort of parting salvo on the way out the door is, seek God and obey him. You missed that part.
It's like fear God and keep his commandments. That's the whole will of man. And the fact that it's written by supposed to be the richest man in history and the wisest is literally humbling himself in this whole book.
Yeah.
But I want to move on to the debate stuff. What inspired you to become a debate teacher?
Oh, yeah. Well, accident and happenstance, or I guess as Christians, we would say providence. So when I was in high school and college, I never dabbled in debate at all. Didn't even think of it, nothing. When I became a teacher, I initially started teaching, like my degree is specifically teaching English. And so I taught literature for, I think, like a year, 2 years or something like that, before the debate teacher retired. And when she made the announcement that she was retiring, it was like right before summer. And so I looked at that and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to go off and enjoy my summer. And then it started to like bother me because nobody responded. No other staff said, I'll pick up the mantle. And I realized that there were students at my school who were already established. They were varsity they called it forensics there. And what were they going to do, right? So it started to bother me and burden me a little bit. And so I just volunteered. I I took some philosophy when I was getting my theology degree, but other than that, I didn't know much about it. But I did love logic. I loved, sort of argumentation. I was already teaching argumentation in literature because I was teaching students how to write and make argumentative, sort of essays and things like that. So I just went away over the summer and I was like, man, I'm going to become the biggest expert on debate that I possibly can. There was a guy who helped me. There was a league of teachers called the Golden Forensics League. This is in Vegas. And I met a guy there who was he was the coach of a really great school in Las Vegas, and he helped me and kind of took me under his wing, and he gave me all of his lesson plans. And I went away over the summer, and I learned a lot from him, and then from other sources. I had to read a lot, and then I hit the ground running that fall as a debate teacher.
Oh my gosh! So you had like no actual experience, really?
Nope, not at all.
Have you, by chance, seen the movie The Great Debaters?
Yes, with Denzel.
So you were Denzel, but he had experience.
Yeah, I love that movie. I think they capture a lot of it very accurately.
Oh, they do? Oh, that's good to know. So you don't have it. You don't have any actual debate experience. So going into teaching it, I guess, how were you feeling? Were you feeling nervous, or did you feel pretty prepared teaching your first class on?
Oh yeah, it's nerve-wracking. You're stepping into, for me, I'm stepping into an environment that I'm not familiar with. Well, and the other thing too is, if you can imagine this, it's like I said, it's called forensics because there's two sort of categories under the broader camp of forensics. You have debate, and on that side of things, you have what's called Lincoln Douglas. You have public policy. You got public forum. You got there's another one that is escaping me. And then on the other side, this whole other developed camp where most of my students was what's called speech. And so in there you have extemporaneous speech, you got humorous interpretation, you got all this stuff. And I was not prepared for speech. I was more prepared for debate. So yeah, the first semester was quite eye-opening for me.
What makes, or I guess, what separates a good debater from a great debater? Like, what characteristics there?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is you really need to be a good listener. You really, most people, especially now, and I don't want to become too reductionistic and blame, the screens and all that stuff for everything. But I think screens have a lot to do with it, just being on screens too much and letting that affect our own interpersonal skills as human beings, right? Because a lot of us now are uncomfortable looking at somebody in the face and having a genuine conversation. But if somebody can listen well and they can do it on the fly, that actually allows them to be able to recall information better. And when they recall this particular information to rebut it, they end up doing so much better. So I think being a great listener is really good. But I think another aspect is you have to be a really great storyteller. This one sort of slips into the broader category of rhetoric. So there's two components of debate. Clearly, you have to be able to further arguments, but then you also have to be persuasive. And so it's not just arguments, because then you could just write out a bunch of stuff. It's going to be super boring, but based on the strength of the arguments, you win or lose, right? It also has to be like this other component of persuasion, and that's where you develop the other aspects of what Plato talked about with rhetoric, which is ethos and pathos. And so you have to, that's what I mean. To be a great storyteller, you have to develop those other aspects. And the reason why being a storyteller is so good is because usually the audience, in a typical debate like what you and I are used to, Devin, the audience is the judge. And the audience is not writing notes. They're not keeping track of the substance of the arguments. The way that they're going to keep track of the debate is when the debate opponent tells the story of the debate that they're witnessing better than the other opponent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and also audience is absurdly biased a lot of the time, depending on who their person is in this whole debate. When it comes to the whole, I guess, because I'm thinking based on my knowledge of the great debaters, I'm like, okay, there's usually like a debate meet, they all show up, and it happens. But what is kind of the logistics look like when it comes to debate meets and competitions? Like, how does that even look?
If you were to walk onto, so let me start here. When I was doing it, and this was years ago, in Las Vegas, high schools would be taken over by the tournament system. And so you would have basically a bunch of students. Like if you were to walk onto a high school campus for a debate tournament, this is a weekend thing. It's gonna take the entire weekend. And you're going to notice immediately that there are all these students that are dressed up to the nines. You know, they've got suit, ties, all that stuff. The ladies are dressed very, very lovely, heels, all the whole thing. And they're standing around waiting. Most of what takes place from my experience is waiting and prepping, you know? But basically a tournament structure is like you have the preliminary rounds, where you have a team that goes up against another debate team. And these you go through rounds essentially where you face off on a particular topic. If you win, you move on, you break, or if you lose, you're out essentially. And what happens is after the preliminary rounds, the top ranked debaters, they advance to what's called single elimination rounds. And then you have all these finals and finals of finals, depending on how big the tournament is. And if you're really good, you end up going to nationals, and that's usually like, where is that? Like, I mean, it was never in Vegas, it was like Virginia or somewhere. So I should say this too. From my experience, the judges, so you'd have all these little high school rooms that were taken over for debate spaces, so that debaters could get up and do their debates. And you would have these judges that would go into these rooms and they would judge the debates. But most people don't know this, but the judges in these contexts, they're usually soccer moms or like, somebody's grandfather that really doesn't have a background in debate, really doesn't know a whole lot, but they're prepped for a few minutes before they get into the room. So it's almost like jury duty.
Yeah.
So when a jury gets up and they're called together, they're prepped on this is how you're going to adjudicate the case that you're about to hear. It's the same thing with judges in debate tournaments.
So do they make sure they do a good job of making sure these people have no relation to either side?
If they say that one more time.
Do they make sure that these people are basically unaffiliated with either team in the debate, so there's no biasness within the judging?
Oh boy, from my perspective, I didn't really see a whole lot of vetting. This is so-and-so's Uncle Tony, we better not let him go. I didn't see that. Maybe there is, that was not something that I was aware of.
Because have you judged before yourself?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, of course, because, clearly now I'm also sort of spilling over into making videos about this, and I'll adjudicate more of the popular YouTube debates that we're aware of. Like the Alex O'Connor, David Wood debate that just happened.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, man. I mean, there's tons of stories here, Devin. So I was in the room.
Oh, you were there?
I was there.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. I heard everyone was really respectful to both parties, which is cool to hear.
They were respectful. There was a moment, too, because I think Alex flew all the way out from England, and it was his birthday. And so you knew most of the people in the audience were Christians. And he knew that going in. But at the end of the debate, everybody got up and sang happy birthday to Alex. So I thought that was very classy. But yeah, man, I mean, it was pretty intense. And if you can picture this, because I don't think anybody talks about this, I'm sitting next to a table where there's Gavin Ortlund, if you know who that is. There's Alan Parr. There's John McCrae. These are all like YouTubers, like big YouTubers. And I think we went into kind of a halftime where basically Ruslan said, okay, stretch your legs. It was right before open dialogue. And nobody told us to do this, but we all gravitated towards each other and we were like, okay, what's going on? Who's winning? Mike Jones ran over from the back of the
Yeah.
room. So it was pretty cool.
Who who do you think won the debate?
Yeah, I actually did a reaction to this, and I'm trying to remember why I said this, but it was I think David Wood bested Alex. And the reason primarily is because of a dropped argument on Alex's part that was not sufficiently refuted. And it was this whole two powers in heaven thing that David, I thought it was one of his strongest parts of his presentation, and Alex just was not. It was clear to me Alex had either never heard of it or did not properly prepare for it.
Okay, Alex is so interesting to me because he was the first atheist to really bring in the whole divine hiddenness problem to my attention as a reason for his lack of belief. But to me, I think his willingness to engage so much with the other side on such a frequent basis just tells me he could be maybe the modern C.S. Lewis, perhaps, because he's just such a brilliant mind too.
I mean, I hear you. I like where your brain's going with this. I mean, that would be a prayer, right?
Of course.
That would be wonderful to see that.
Yeah, yeah. And I was thinking about this too. So you've done obviously pastoral work, lots of debates and whatnot in terms of as a coach. These are things that involve very confident displays of public speaking skill. Was that just natural for you? Was that just innate always? Because we talked about death earlier, and that's up there with the biggest fears is death and public speaking.
Boy, this is a good question. And the reason why I hesitate is because I really do get the sense that the reason why I'm here and I'm doing what I'm doing is because of the Lord. When I grew up, especially early childhood, I struggled to speak. I had a real problem with it. I was never diagnosed with anything, so I can't say if I had some kind of an impediment or something like that. But I remember the experience of trying to communicate as being incredibly frustrating. And I would start to say things, and the words would get stuck in my throat, and they would feel like it's almost like a bowling ball or something stuck, and they would never get any further than my throat. And I would get frustrated, and then I would just cry as a little child. And it became this thing where it was very difficult for me to overcome that. But now, obviously, like looking back, I'm 46 now. Clearly, I have the ability to articulate, and I give all glory to the Lord. You would not look at me in the beginning of my life and then think, oh yeah, this is where this is headed. He's going to be a YouTuber and a debate teacher and all this. It's the Lord.
Wow. So you're one to be very careful with your words out of fear when you were younger.
Yeah. That's astute, right? Yeah, there is this element, and it comes from childhood where one of my pet peeves is being misunderstood. I really do not desire to be misunderstood because, yeah, I struggled as a child to communicate properly.
Oh man. Wow. I relate to that heavy. That's very interesting.
Mm.
And so since your YouTube channel is about debates, or no, it's not about debates, it's about a lot of things, but you do have videos that feature you reacting to debates. Is that something you also just watch for fun? Do you still keep up with debates now, or do you only kind of do it for the sake of the YouTube channel?
This is a really great question because I have a kind of a conflicted attitude when it comes to debate. I see its utility. I see the benefits of it, and I see much potential here. As a matter of fact, I've started recently. I started a debate masterclass series online. It's live right now, where I teach people how to debate. I basically pull things that I was doing in the classroom with my students, and I go over the fundamentals of debate. I go over philosophy of winning. I go over, my 3-step method to formulating cross-examination questions, how to deconstruct arguments, because I see the potential in especially younger generations of Christians who need to know how to engage arguments and think critically. We're in a kind of a weird milieu right now, Devin, where where there's an oversaturation of information because of the internet, and people know how to pull information, but they don't know what's good information and what's bad information. And so even if I just left it at that, that is a good reason to understand some of the fundamentals of debate. But then obviously there's there's people who want to develop their communication and presentation styles. They want to be able to actually get up on stage and go up against somebody like Alex O'Connor. And so I see potential. However, there's a downside to this, and that is that debates also they feed the flesh for a lot of people, and it's negative. And people start to they want to. I don't want to get dramatic with this, but they want to see blood, and so they watch debates and they're like, "Yeah, go get him," and it's really not. We are living right now in a very disputational culture. The atmosphere is very adversarial. And so debates, they get out there. Most of them I disagree with fundamentally about how they're sort of outlined and presented in the first place. And it doesn't add anything. It usually just adds more fire. And so I kind of have a low view of what's going on in the debate scene right now. So I'm conflicted.
Would you rather react to conversations maybe?
Oh, totally. That's what I'm trying to do with the pastor react stuff.
Yeah, because I agree that people do want to see blood. For example, if I post a debate saying, let's say it's some kind of, let's say it's Carl Sagan versus C.S. Lewis, and if I caption the video, Carl Sagan and C.S. Lewis have a conversation about the universe, or if I caption the video, debate gets heated, Carl Sagan versus C.S. Lewis, then it's going to be like millions of views for the second video, and the first video will probably get some good views too, but not nearly as much as the fact that people want to see, almost some kind of animosity or violence within these discussions.
Yep, totally. And I play the game too, and sometimes it's just a little slimy. And yeah, you're totally right.
Well, that being said, then, do you have a debate that you enjoyed watching because the content itself was just that enriching?
Yeah, I mean, these would be debates that are more rigorous and academic, that it seems more evenly matched. So I think most people would answer, and then they would provide the craziest moments. There's a James White video of a debate with James White and Jeff Durbin versus two atheists, and one of the atheists gets up and he wants James White to drink antifreeze. And, and they're like, most people are like, that's my favorite stuff. It's like the carnival stuff. That's not me. There was a debate, and it was kind of an accident the way that it happened, but it was William Lane Craig versus Shelly Kagan. And I think Kagan, he was a professor at NYU or something. I found that to actually be incredibly substantive, and I really appreciated something like that.
Yeah, that debate was interesting, especially since I'm sure Shelly Kagan was told that was going to be a debate. William Lane Craig was told that was going to be a discussion. So they're kind of on different wavelengths there, but nonetheless, it turned out to be a pretty good product from a enjoyment perspective, if you will.
Yeah, it was almost like Dr. Craig had one hand tied behind his back.
Yeah, I couldn't release his full powers just yet.
Yeah.
Do you have or I guess here would be the question, what's like your Mount Rushmore of Christian debaters? Like you mentioned James White, Lane Craig. Would those be, I assume, on the Mount Rushmore?
Mount Rushmore of, wow. Mount Rushmore, William Lane Craig, got to be William Lane Craig. James White, he's a beast. Trent Horn.
Sure.
I really do appreciate his approach. And Mike Jones. Mike Jones knows how to handle himself incredibly well. So I have a friend who I just had dinner with him too, but because we were talking about debates, and I don't think he sees himself the way that I see him. But I have a friend who I think is really good. If he would just, what's the word, like, let loose. Like, it's almost like he holds himself back. But it's Gavin Ortlund. He has a channel called Truth Unites. He's kind of went up against Trent Horn. Gavin is a Protestant apologist. answers a lot of Catholic challenges. I think Gavin would be a beast. I understand how his brain works, and he's an incredible academic, and I would include him as well.
Wow. Did you guys talk about the recent Mormon he featured on his channel when they discussed the Trinity?
We did.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder how that went behind the scenes, as in, like, if they had any extra dialogue after that, because that same guy has talked to many Christians now, it seems like, on like Christian apologists, and he's debated the Trinity with a few of them. And I'm wondering if he's by any means swayed. I'm always, like, interested by that part. Like, how are they feeling after the fact now?
Well, I'll tell you this. So nobody knows this again. Gavin and I were at a conference recently. This is in California. And this guy, I think his name is Jacob something. This guy shows up it's a Christian conference, and he was there, and we ended up talking a little bit. But afterwards, I was telling Gavin, I don't know, like, I can't get a read on this Jacob guy. So my whole thing is, and I get offers to do debates, and I think when the right one comes along, I'll probably say yes. But because of my concerns, and I mentioned this before, I'm usually, my lead foot is no, because I think dialogue is much more valuable. And I think the audience is the ones who benefit the most. So obviously, I'm not trying to change the debater's mind. They're not going to change their mind mid-debate. It's the audience. And I feel like the audience is more receptive to dialogue than they are blood in the water debates. But anyway, so I think about, like, going up against Jacob or going up against somebody like Alex O'Connor. I can't get a read on whether or not these people are genuine. Because if they were, I would have no problems engaging them. I went up against and had a great conversation with Peter Boghossian, who's an atheist professor. And I thought that was not only a good conversation, but it left the door open to having more. But, like somebody like Jacob and Alex, I get the sense, and I could be wrong, Dev, you tell me what you think. I get the sense that they'll just say whatever it takes to win.
I've gotten the feeling that this can be easily false. They can refute me anytime they want. I'm always available. I've gotten the sense that a part of the reason that they stay on their share sides of the issue is because it fuels their, I don't want to say finances, but like career trajectory to a degree. I don't know. Sometimes I don't feel like they're ready to give that up necessarily for the sake of fully engrossing in the truth.
Oh,
because obviously Alex O'Connor, if he became a Christian, would lose a decent chunk of his audience. Jacob, I feel like his would grow, if anything, honestly. But I think there's a degree there that sacrificing those worldviews also comes with sacrificing a lot of personal things that they heavily enjoy. Not even just talking about their relationships with their relatives or whatnot that might not enjoy them hopping to the other side, but their actual audiences that they have because of their share fields and careers.
I mean, I'm tracking what you're saying, Yeah, and if probably this happened, right? So Alex becomes the next C.S. Lewis. It's like just, it's almost like the YouTube channel becomes this thing that records the journey for him,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I get it, yeah.
But I get what you're saying too, that they're kind of say whatever at times, because I think at times Alex will throw out an argument that even he knows doesn't carry that much weight, but he'll do it because it's something worth talking about. To your point,
Exactly.
maybe.
Exactly.
So I definitely think there's a level of prevalency there. But okay, so you said Gavin, James White, Trent Horn, William and Craig. That's your 4?
Yeah, I think that's
Strong 4.
that's a strong 4.
Do you have a 4 that are atheists that you would say, like, they do a good job debating from the other side?
Boy. So, like, one of the criteria, let me back up because I think this might help the discussion, right? Like, what is debate? What is it for? I think debates are meant to wrestle with ideas. It is a competition of competing ideas. You know what I mean? And so that draws out clash. That's what makes the groundwork for a good debate. But that's what I mean. Like, are we really? Who is bringing the best ideas to the table and not playing games to just win the debate. You know what I mean? You by the way, you can sort of take what I just said and use it against Christians that I've seen get up on stage too. So don't get me wrong. However, if that's what's going on, and I'm sort of trying to figure out who is a really good atheist debater, I can't think of any. But I will say this. In terms of rhetorical ability, Alex O'Connor is probably one of the better ones that I've seen. He's to me seems like somebody in line with Christopher Hitchens. As a matter of fact, if I had to guess, I only talked to Alex briefly one time, and I didn't get the chance to ask him this. But if I had to guess, I bet Christopher Hitchens is one of his idols.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, wow. It's funny too with the atheist debaters. Your channel showed me because some of these guys, I'm like, oh, he's pretty good. But then you would dissect his debate style and how what really goes into what he's saying. Like Matt Dillahunty, I thought he was like top 3 atheist debaters on their side. But then your channel showed me that he really isn't that great, especially when he doesn't know what level of evidence would be convincing for him, which is extremely hard to work with as if you're someone debating that kind of person that doesn't really know what can be convincing, what not, and what can't be convincing.
Right. And you wouldn't know this because he's so authoritarian in his style.
Yes.
Which let me be real. I lean authoritarian in my tone of voice. I don't know if you've picked up on that, but it's like, but when I speak, I'm forceful, and it seems like that means I know what I'm talking about. And I realize that about myself, but Matt Dillahunty has this in spades. As a matter of fact, he gets upset and uses his anger as part of his debate strategy. And that to me is disgusting.
He does. And then he will say things very sarcastically. But I remember seeing a video of him he got very upset. He was debating a guy named Andrew Wilson at Modern Day Debate.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew Wilson's a pretty harsh guy. And Matt has matched to come to harshness. Like Andrew's much more harsh than Matt is. And Andrew said something to Matt, and Matt just got up and made this huge scene and left the debate, if you remember this. It's sometimes in the last couple of years. But yeah. Or how about this? If you could choose one debate to show the whole world, what would you choose? Or discussion?
So, I actually, I really appreciate, so I am not, don't get me wrong, I'm not a presuppositional apologist. I'm not even somebody who thinks like a lot of presuppositionalists that presuppositionalism is the only legitimate form of apologetics. And I have friends who, they swim in that camp. I really do appreciate, though, presuppositionalists who argue because they have a solid grasp of not only debate but logic in general. And so when people stray and try to, lean more into emotionalism or something like that, they'll get called out usually by presuppositional guys like Jeff Durbin or James White, I think, is a presuppositional guy. My friend Eli Ayala is a presuppositional guy. There's this new guy too. He's making waves. Joel Sedicase, I think. Anyway, but I appreciate that, and I feel like those tend to be more rigorous in terms of the witness coming from the Christian as well. And so, for some reason, the one that comes to mind is Bonson versus. Oh, who was the atheist?
This is an old one, isn't it?
This is old.
Yeah.
You got to understand, Devin, like I'm an avid reader. I love to read. And if you can this is what I would encourage anybody who's in your audience. If they can grab a transcript of a debate, they should read the transcript before watching it. Because you can immediately it's like you almost cut off the fat of tone of voice and other sorts of rhetorical persuasive stuff just to get at the substantive. You can immediately see what the contentions are if you read it, as opposed to listening. And then, some guys put on an affect when they speak. And, to me, that's unhelpful. So I would prefer to read a debate, but I also do enjoy the older stuff. Like I said, Bonson versus golly, the guy lost so poorly, I forgot his name. The atheist who went up against Bonson. I appreciate that one.
Yeah, that guy was tremendous. I've heard. I haven't really listened to his stuff back then, but I heard he was an exceptional apologist.
Yeah, he handled him. I'm not too familiar. I'm just familiar with what he did on the debate stage,
Okay.
and he was pretty solid.
Okay. And also, your YouTube channel, what inspired you to, because I know Wise Disciples around a decade old, 12 years old?
Wise Disciple as a ministry started in 2013 under a different name altogether. Yep. And Wise Disciple on YouTube has been around since COVID, so that's almost 5 years.
Okay. What was the final push for you to do the YouTube channel full time?
Well, shoot. Yeah. So, okay. So if you can imagine that. So now it's COVID, but I'm a pastor and I'm helping my senior pastor, who's my mentor, preach. And now all of a sudden we're shut down, which is what a lot of churches had to do. And now we're preaching to a camera, which was really bizarre. But that's when we were sort of forced to, like, what is it? Ben Franklin said, necessity is the mother of invention. Like, we're forced to think outside the box here. And that's when the gears started turning with regard to Wise Disciple. Because if I'm talking to a camera, I'm like, well, wait a second, I can do the same thing, with my side hustle, my side ministry, Wise Disciple. And so I at the time, I was a nonprofit. Wise Disciple as a ministry was a nonprofit. And so I went to my board and I said, hey, I want to try to get on YouTube. What do you think? And they're like, yeah, give it a shot. That was really it. It was just COVID forcing us to think outside the box.
Did you have the creative freedom to come up with the background?
The background, you mean this?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I came up with all of this. It's funny. I came up with this in like 5 minutes. I came up with the name. So back then, like I said, it was like 20. So this was slightly before. The timing of this is a little spread out. But right around, I think it was end of 2018, 2019 or something like that, I changed the name of the ministry. And the reason why I did that was because people were so confused with the original name. I won't even tell you because it's so silly, but the people were confused. And so I'm like, okay, we need something that's a little bit more clear. And so I literally thought up in 5 minutes the name and this logo.
Wow.
So
were you just how about the colors? Was that something you're kind of experimenting a lot with, or did you know immediately I want to go? It was like a blue and a red?
Boy, I don't remember what the rationale was with the colors. I'm really bad with how things look. I think my wife is an art teacher. I think she kind of helped me. The reason why blue and red are here is to represent the clash of ideas. So you have somebody representing one side going up against somebody who represents another side. That was initially what it became, and then I think it kind of just stuck.
It's a good signature background. It's kind of like, you ever done a trivia night and they say, guess that living room space?
No.
Like a sitcom living room. They'll pull up a sitcom living room. You got to write down what sitcom it is.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's like a thing. But I think in the future it's going to be like podcast backgrounds without the person being there. Like, guess that background, and yours is going to be like, Wise Disciple trivia.
That's fun.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah, obviously, 10 years doing Wise Disciple, 12 years, 5 years since the YouTube channel really got going. What are the biggest lessons you've learned from doing this?
Boy. That's a really good question. To this day, I'll do videos. And you have to understand, I'm in a tiny, this is a tiny studio, very tiny. And I'm literally, I'm wearing a nice shirt and sometimes gym shorts under the desk, you know what I'm saying? And I'm looking at a camera and it feels like I'm putting things out there into the ether. One of the biggest lessons that I've had to learn over time, because I think in the beginning it kind of helped me, public speaking is still the number one struggle that people have,
Sure.
And every now and then, even when I get up and speak to a new audience, an audience that I don't know, so not my church, but another one, you get the nerves, And so it helped me in the beginning to just go, oh yeah, I'm in my room alone. and I'm just talking. But I've had to learn over time, no, like people are watching. People are being affected by what I'm doing. And it's caused me to rethink some of the videos or the direction of videos that I was going down or a path that I was taking. You know, I can't remember when that was specifically, but I just remember at some point I started getting 75 to 100 emails a week from people. And I was like, oh, okay, so people are watching. Like, oops, that's like I better be extra careful about that. The other lesson that I learned is you cannot. So this is something that people ask me about, like they want to start their own channels and stuff like that. When I first started Wise Disciple on the YouTube side, I really wanted to talk about evangelism and discipleship. Those are like those are my strengths. Those are the things I know a lot about. I also wanted to teach the Bible. When I immediately got on YouTube, nobody wanted to hear it. And I tried all kinds of videos. I experimented with narration videos for a little bit, where you don't see me, you just hear my voice, and it's like AI art or that whole thing. And I learned over time that what I want to talk about, people didn't want to hear it. And so I had to keep that sort of with open hands, hold it with open hands. And I meet a lot of people who are like, I have a vision, I want to get started, and this is what I want to talk about. And I was like, okay, hold that with open hands, because you might have to shift or pivot or experiment, you know, and maybe go the long way and reintroduce some of the things that you're passionate about later when you've developed enough of a voice.
Mm. Mm. Are you still good on time?
I have maybe 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Yeah.
Cool. We'll knock out some of these questions then. Oh, I wanted to hear your take on future Christianity. How do you think Christianity looks in America in 20 to 30 years?
Boy. Yeah. So it's funny because I was having a conversation with William Lane Craig for my own podcast. This was a couple years ago. And he said that basically what we're experiencing is a repeat of the late 60s. And that always struck with me, you know, because I think he's right. I see history repeating itself in cyclical patterns. And so, you know, you got the late 60s, but what happened directly after the late 60s? You had the Jesus Revolution. And so I obviously things are not exactly like cookie cutter repeat. Like clearly things are expressed differently in different historical contexts, but I do see cyclical patterns. So if Jesus tarries, I wonder if we're going to find ourselves in a bit of a new style of revival, which is actually, it's kind of been on the lips of some of my friends who are making videos. You know, it's like, what are we seeing here? You know, we're seeing new statistics come out where the trajectory of people who would identify themselves as Christians and who would go to church, it used to be going this way. Now it's going back up again, you know, and people are starting to wonder if this is revival.
Interesting. It's certainly feeling that way, especially when I was talking to Justin Brierley. He had a show called Premier Unbelievable, big conversation show in Europe. And he was saying how there has been, according to statistics, a very big increase in the amount of people that are open to hearing more about God versus them being closed off completely to the conversation, which is definitely reassuring. I think adds to that potential revival.
Yeah. Yeah, I whatever happens, there is much hope. These are good signs to be seeing in the next 20 to 30 years.
Amen. Okay, quick pivot. You made a couple of videos about aliens before, which I watched at least 3 times. What are your thoughts on aliens now? Do you think they have to be some kind of angelic or demonic being, or do you shift towards they can be something that wasn't described in scripture and they're kind of their own thing within life? They're just non-human intelligence that is just out there.
I kind of see what you're asking. I wonder if you could give me a little clarification on non-human entity, but I will say this, my position has not changed. Okay, let me press pause and back all the way up. Is it possible that aliens exist somewhere in outer space? Yes, it's possible. The reason why I've sort of shared my my thoughts is and again, I didn't come up with this. I'm sort of relaying what others have said. It's incredibly difficult for biological beings to travel such great distance from another galaxy to come into our own and then do the things that they're doing on our planet. What makes more sense is that they're just interdimensional travelers. But if they're interdimensional travelers, well, then that opens up a category that the Bible knows a lot about.
Mm.
Hold on one second. I got a guy outside. I apologize.
Very good.
I don't know what that is. Did my microphone pick that up?
Yeah, I thought it sounded like it was laundry.
It's aliens. They're coming to get me. Here he comes. Oh, I think it's a lawnmower. I apologize.
No, it's cool.
Wonder if he's coming back. Okay, I think he's gone.
Okay.
So I'll pick it up here. So that's why I would say either you. So now I realize I've been a little inarticulate in the sense that, like, he came back. He came back. Those are our aliens. It's UFOs. They're messing with us. I apologize. Let me try this again. Having said all of that, I would say, there is an opportunity for me to because I don't think I've clearly articulated this, but when somebody sees an alien or there's a sighting, are we always seeing demons? I don't think so. It could be, these are the messengers of God that are part of. They're against the devil. In other words, they're against the devil's soldiers, right? But certainly, when you get into the abduction cases and they're trying to feed people a bunch of lies about the origins of the universe and Jesus and the gospel, I think those are demons, and I don't see that there needs to be another sort of explanation.
Okay, cool. Last question for you. Every time we have an episode, we always ask our guests one question you would ask God if you knew you'd get an answer right then and there. What question would you ask?
If I could ask God a question and I knew he would answer, wow. Well, it's it's hard because I appreciate now at my age that the whole point of my relationship with God is not knowing the answer to a lot of the questions that I have in the moment, because that forces you to develop trust in him. You know what I would ask him? How can I love my family better? One of the things that I'm constantly concerned about is being present with my wife and my sons. My sons are 13 and 9 as of right now. And, the nature of what I do and getting into projects, I can be somewhere else, even when my physical body is at the dinner table, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can I love my family better? I disciple my sons now. How can I do that better? I date my wife every week. How can I do that better? That would probably be my question.
That's solid. We haven't gotten that one yet. I think the closest we got was a Christian philosopher named Josh Rasmussen said, "How can he love his wife more?" I just said, "How sweet." But Nate, again, thank you so much for taking time to do this. Any other tips, words of wisdom you want to leave with our audience?
Hey, stay close to the Word of God. The older I get, the more I realize we need it now more than ever. Saturate yourself with God's Word and everything will be just fine.
Amen. That is Nate Sala. Thanks, Nate.
All right.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.